Hi everybody. I'm glad to be here this evening with Kim Howatt, and she's from Radar Canine, all the way in Chicagoland. And I'm sitting here, as you know, in sunny Austria. It is sunny today, even though we've got a bit of snow. And we've got a really fantastic topic, something so interesting, something that Kim has been familiar with for a while, and I'm just getting to know, and that is called functional characters. So I'm going to let Kim take it away. First of all, Kim, please introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then tell us all about functional characters, please.
Hey, Sue, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. Like Sue said, I'm Kim Howatt. My business is Radar Canine, and I'm kind of new on the map. And my whole goal is to help people understand their dogs better, bring the proper dog into their family, and help with adjustment periods, and overall just make life a little more relaxed and calm and happy for the families and the animals, and in a holistic way. So body, mind, spirit, relationships, and just working on that.
Brilliant. Can I come and have you live in our house, please, Kim? So then you can just... We just have a little Kim living in our house to sort everything out.
You know what? I've seen where you live, and I would absolutely love it. It's a little flat in cornfields here. It's a little more scenic by you.
Yeah, cool.
I'm a Dancing Heart certified partnership coach. I am studying botanical self-selection, and I have studied functional characters. And I, at this point, need to throw out that Isla Fishburne is who I've studied with. She is a doctor, PhD. She's a zoologist, a conservationist, and a shaman. She brings science and spirituality together, and has done a lot of research on functional characters with captive wolves and also dogs. And it's been a life-changing set of knowledge for me. So I'm excited to pass it along to others, because it's really important that it's such a huge understanding for us to know our canines better.
Yeah, it just gives us a whole new different insight into who they are as individuals, I think, and just helps us to understand them so much better. And with that understanding comes a whole trail then of being much easier to live with if we can make certain adjustments for
exactly
them.
And sometimes that's all it is a simple nutritional adjustment, or a simple adjustment as far as what we do with them, or even understanding why they react the way they react. So it helps us to relax, I think, and full on appreciate the canine for what they're bringing to the table with their ancient instinct and their role that they have to play, where we try to micromanage everything so much of the time with them, and sometimes it's a matter of just letting them be who they were born to be.
Yeah. Embracing that individuality, letting them shine for who they are. Brilliant. Awesome. Okay, so let's rock and roll then. And you're going to give us, how many functional characters are there? Do you know?
There are nine
functional characters. Okay, so what is a functional character, Kim?
When a litter of, we're going to talk dogs.
Yeah.
So when a litter of dogs is born, they all are born with an innate role. So there's no rank to any of the functional characters, but they each have a role to play, because the whole goal of a litter is to be safe. So safety is always the top priority. When we have a dog, the dog is always going to do things that keep them safe. They're not doing them to spite us. They do them because they want to be safe. So when a litter is born, they all have a unique function to serve and a role to play in keeping that group safe. So it's a group.
So it's like the group dynamic of that specific family group that they're born into they'll each have a role to play that provides either safety or food or what is it, reproduction, etc., etc. Is that the kind of thing we're talking
Yes.
about? Okay.
Yes. Every group member is important. They all have a role to play. It's harmonious and it's beautiful. They're all valued and needed, and there's not any, like I said, there's no rank of importance, but there is a functional character that's a priority individual.
Mm-hmm.
So that's probably the first and most complicated one to talk about, and that functional character is actually called the guide.
Mm-hmm.
So in many old school training theories, the guide would have been the dominant dog, the alpha. But they're not. They are on a pedestal.
Mm-hmm.
Their whole role is to guide the direction and keep the pack safe. So they say when to go, where to go, and how long to stay there.
Mm-hmm.
If you're thinking in Chinese personality types, they'd be metal, where they set the rules.
Mm-hmm.
So think of if you have a dog that likes to get in the way and dictate the movement of another dog in the household.
Mm-hmm.
You might say that they were bullying them, but they might very well be a guide. We also must take into consideration that breed does matter. So you do need to understand the breed traits, because herding dogs are going to do that as a natural function of their instinctive nature. But when it's to the extreme, they very well might be a guide. When a litter is born, there could be no guides. There could be one male. There could be one female. There could be one male and one female, so the most two. But there may not be any that are born. They see themselves as a priority individual,
Right.
so they do put themselves on a pedestal.
So if you say, sorry, if it's possible that there's no guide that's born into a litter, do one of them then take on the role, or?
No, actually.
So that group would be sort of without a guide.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it happens.
Mm-hmm.
They're very special, but that's probably, then you think about, okay, you would look back and say, okay, which functional character was bred?
Mm-hmm.
Which one was the reproducer?
Okay.
Because and this is where humans get in the way, right? Like natural selection probably would always tend to have a guide more often than the way we say, I'm going to breed you to you.
Mm-hmm.
You don't understand who you're picking to breed if you pick based on color, or this dog looks really great. I love the fur and the markings, and you pick the docile temperament, then you're going to pass those traits down.
Mm-hmm.
So you may end up with not a guide.
Okay. So I didn't realize that. So it doesn't have to be a guide in each.
No.
All right. Okay, so tell us more about the guide. So he's the sort, or he or she, it could be a male or female. So they pretty much, as you say, like I would say that like the leader, they, as you said, they decide, they make certain decisions, but it's based on safety. Is it something like also going with the old sort of theory of being an alpha? Are they the ones that, let's say, do a lot of correcting to other dogs, or a lot of posturing, or is that not necessarily the case?
No, they're actually pretty aloof.
Mm-hmm.
I like to sort of explain it like they're a general in the army.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to be the ones that create the plan.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to dictate, you go here, but they're always going to be in a place of safety. So their whole role is to dictate the movement of the pack, but to keep themselves safe. Because if there is a guide and the guide were to die in the wild, the pack would die also, eventually.
Without the leader, yeah.
Right. So a good way to think of the guide is strength through knowledge.
Yeah, I like that. And like you called him the general, I like that, the term that, he or she is the general.
Yeah.
So as you say, so they're not the ones that are in the, like let's say there was a group of dogs and the one sort of moves to the forward and starts, I don't know, bullying or picking on another dog. I'm not saying that this is, a functional character thing, but let's just say very often people will say, well, that's the one that's up front. He's the dominant, the alpha, the guide, whatever. But you're saying that he normally hangs back because he doesn't necessarily want to be involved in all of that. He's actually,
No.
You'll let somebody else do the job. So who's the guy who does that job?
The defender.
Aha.
So like the guide would be the one that's like if you were to walk in and look at the litter of pups, they'd be the one standing over there, watching from afar.
Okay.
So they would be processing the situation and watching what the other dogs did to determine if it was safe. So they're not going to be snuggly. They will not be cuddly. Somebody may think that they're very stubborn because they're extraordinarily smart. And when you teach them something and they've learned it, they really don't want to deal with it again. So I got this. I don't need to do this. So they hate repetition.
When they have to be trained and they have to be done the same thing over and over again in every circle.
They're fiercely independent and they appear selfish, but it's really because they're keeping themselves safe. So they're grudge holders as dogs. They're the dog, awesome way to notice this, and we have 2 guides in our house, so it's pretty interesting to watch. They are allowed to go groom another dog in the pack or the household, but they will not accept it. They will dictate play. So yes, I'll play with you, but we're done when I say we're done. They will go sniff in a greeting, but they don't want anyone invading their space. So they dictate or allow, and they'll allow, but they won't just, a follower is just going to say hello and be very happy to have the reciprocal sniff, so to speak.
So it can be a sort of a one-way thing with them. They, as you say, they could maybe initiate something, but it doesn't necessarily mean it. They would like it in return or allow it in return.
Correct. So they're very sensitive too. So what is a really small startle for one dog might be quite a trauma for a guide.
Oh, right. Okay. So
they, it might be an excessive reaction, or they may be they're very sensitive to the change in environment. So, and again, they may or may not engage in play. We have one who doesn't play and one who does, but he definitely dictates it.
Okay.
So the defender is the one that you're talking about that's kind of up in the front. That's very confident. They don't get startled by much. They're usually the biggest dog in the litter. They're a very large dog in the litter, but when there's a noise that startles the guide, and the guide will move away to the safe space, the defender's just sort of unaffected.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So they are strength through power. So they're strength for strength, muscle strength, like a bouncer, yes, like a bouncer in a bar. Their natural their Chinese character would be wood.
Okay, all right. So they're a woody. Okay.
Now, anybody that's not a guide is a follower, but of the group of followers, they all have a role. So the defender is the natural protector, and they determine if there is a threat or not. So if something happens in the environment and it changes, the guide will look at the defender to see what they're doing.
So it was the defender, could it be, I know you've spoken about breed has something to do with this, but are they the sort of more guard doggy breeds? The dogs that are always on lookout, they like to, do their, I'm thinking of the English word, their territory. Will they sort of suss out the territory? Are they on alert? Are they sort of like sentinels or not?
No, they're really calm, and they're big and confident. They're the ones that'll go check out unknowns. So if you have that scary thing that's out in your yard, the defender's going to go up and check it out, or the guide's going to be like toying with it, barking with it, backing up, going towards it. Like, they aren't going to be sure, so they're going to kind of do that hoppy back and forth check out thing where they jump back and then go forward, and that's pretty humorous for humans to watch. A defender loves to work, and they will repeat things endlessly. They flow off the energy of the group, so if everyone's calm, they'll play along. But if there's nervous energy from like the owner or something in the environment, then they'll stop performing and start protecting. So if you think about like doing obedience, your dog, if you're doing obedience with the defender and you're like, hey, we're awesome in practice and everything's going great, and then you go to a trial and the dog like starts losing marks because they move a little bit, you may want to consider your nervous system, because if you show that you're nervous or adrenalized, they're gonna step out in front of you maybe a little bit to protect you.
That's interesting, because I mean, yeah, as you say, I mean, generally in like a trial sort of environment, you're anyway a little bit more nervous and possibly not feeling your right self, so they may pick up on that, and as you say, can easily bring them out of that job and into the functional character job, which is to defend you. Yeah, and they would, because like they would give up their life for the pack. They would sacrifice their life for the pack. So that's, it sounds dramatic, but I mean, it really is true that they would put themselves in the face of danger to protect the guide and to keep the guide safe and the rest of the pack. The interesting thing about a defender too, that you need to be careful of, and if you have a defender that's a puppy, and like say you don't allow your dogs on the furniture, if you give them like a physical, like get off the furniture, they watch how you correct, and then they will start taking that role on as correctors. So then think about having another dog who tries to, you get another puppy and they try to jump on the couch, or a child that is allowed on the couch, and they know that small things aren't allowed on furniture, and they will correct, but they can't use hands, so they will use their mouth. Wow, that's amazing, Kim, because I have a client with that at the moment, quite an interesting one, where they got the one dog, and I thought that he may be a defender, and now that you said that, it's a bell went off because they got another puppy, and exactly that. The first dog was never allowed on the couch, and the puppy, being sweet and cute and a much smaller dog, was allowed on the couch, and he used to correct, or he still does correct her all the time. The puppy, he corrects the puppy the moment she jumps up on the couch. He goes and grabs her and says, "No, off."
Well, and you think about like how we keep learning that like dogs are our mirror.
Yeah,
I mean, that's like that's gonna be like the consummate mirror, right? Like, oh boy. So you just need to be mindful about how you go about when and if you knew that you had a defender, you would be very, it'll make you more mindful.
Well, again, as you say, because if they're watching you to see the way you correct or whatever, and this is also been something I've always said, that I didn't know from a defender point of view. I just think it's a general role modeling thing. If you correct your dogs with force or loud voice or whatever, you're teaching them exactly what they should be doing, and then they go and do that on other dogs, because that's what you've role modeled. That if you want something, you've got to fight for it. If you want something, you've got to argue about it. If you want something, you've got to raise your voice and be stern about it.
And they're going to just be a little mini-me and start doing the same thing.
Not such a mini either, maxi-me.
Which is, it's super interesting, because they will take on that role of corrector, and like the corrections officer, and if you knew and understood that you had a defender, I mean, you would recognize that was the behavior that was happening, and rectify it, or like, it'll make us better people, and we won't start yelling at our dogs. we'll find a more peaceful way
Yeah.
of accommodating it. So it's just really something that's so mindful to keep in mind, and because we all do it, we all find ourselves getting frustrated and yelling at our dog, but they're just going to yell too then. So,
Exactly.
and they'll be more emphatic about it than some of the other
Yeah. And
characters.
again, you
So.
hear that, that talking about the jumping on the couch story, you hear that as well in lots of the sort of old training methods where people say, don't allow your dog on the couch or the bed, because when you try and get them off and they say no to you, they growl or whatever, and then you sort of step back and say, whoa, okay. Now they say, your dog's got the upper hand on you, and so now you really need to shove them off the couch and show them who's boss, etc. But as you said, if it's done in a specific way where you can role model to your dogs, cooperate with me, there's a time for on, there's a time for off, etc., etc. There should be no, you shouldn't have to go into that kind of whole, dominance, I'm the boss kind of thing.
Exactly, and it's, as the humans, if we have a defender on our household, we would be the guide for them.
Yes.
But as a whole thing, even if we have a guide, we need to be a leader. It's just like if you're a manager at a job,
yeah,
you have employees that have different personality types. Somebody might need to be leaned into a little more, like, that you have to kind of just keep asking them time and again if their work is done, or somebody else is extremely independent and you don't need to ask them so many times. So as a leader of the family, we need to consider, like, if we understand the functional character, you would not need to tell the guide so many times, but another functional character, you may have to, like, repeat things. But the guide's going to get annoyed with you, and, like, they're grudge holders, so,
stop telling you what to do.
and they will, and, so, like when we play Frisbee with Django, who's a guide, he brings it halfway back. And it's so frustrating that, like, or when we do like a recall, he comes every single time from 10 acres away, but not to me. He stops short, or he goes like to the side, but he's always right there. And it frustrated me for a long time, because you want that recall to be right here. Well, if he came to me every time, then I'm dictating to him. And he's a guide. So we compromise. I either have to have food. Okay, I know that.
Yeah.
That's not wrong. It doesn't mean we have a horrible relationship or a bad partnership. It's just, if I want him to come to me, he's going to come for food, or I'm okay with him coming within 3 feet.
Within that, yeah. Like you say, so it's coming. He's just not coming, right into you. He's
right, because and if he brings the Frisbee back every time, I'm dictating. So it's like when you start to understand that relationship, you just make the adjustment and say, okay, I hear you. And we become now the good leader who understands our dog better. And we make choices that everyone's more relaxed and happy. So now we have like the perfect situation, because we have Zori, who brings the Frisbee back all the way. Done.
Exactly.
We just had multiple Frisbees, and you would, play with them. So, and you would walk up to the next one and throw one, and we just had two, and we would, so you make the concessions, like it's not even concessions. It's just you work in a partnership.
Exactly. I was going to just say, you work it out. You work as a partnership. And going back to what you said as well, we being the leader of the family group, as it were, as you say, it's almost like I like to talk about this transformational leadership, because that's what some of the characters that you do. You look to see everybody in the group, and you adjust accordingly to see who needs more motivation, who do you need to cooperate with more, who needs more support, who needs more whatever it is that they need. And so you can adjust what you need to give them in order for them to be at their top of their game.
Right, and that's exactly true. And just because I'm saying a guide wants to, like, dictate the movement there are times as the leader where we can allow that, and there are times where it's not safe. And the bottom line is that we, as the leaders of the family, our dogs are living with us. They rely on us. They rely on us for food. They rely on us. So it's our job ultimately to decide what's safe and what isn't safe. Finding the opportunities to allow them to emote that function is important.
Yeah.
So if you're micromanaging a guide 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, you're going to have a problem. So you need to like find that outlet for them to be able to functionally
as they
live that character, because they do need to work in that role. I mean, that's their job. That's what they were born for. So it's important to find that space.
Yeah.
And guides can be a challenge. I mean, they're stubborn but they're also just they're amazing. And we're blessed with two, and they are everyday lessons for me. I mean, to be honest with you, understanding them is the whole reason I'm here. It's why I am off on this new career path, and I want to help other people, because this understanding for me of all the partnership and all the responsibility is the reason I'm here. And it's, we're here to help each other.
Exactly. Fascinating. So. Cool. So now we've had the guide and we've had the defender. What about the others? I know there's the overseer, because I have Charlie, who's my overseer. So tell us about the overseer.
The overseer. All right. Their role in the pack, in the group, is the quality controller. So they wake up every day, and their role is to test all of the other group members to see if they're fit for duty. Their focus is on the biochemistry of the group, and in the Chinese medicine, they would be fire.
The fire element, yeah.
Yeah. So they are a very tough functional character for a first-time dog owner, because they love routine, they love calm. But because they're testers, they're going to be nibblers, they're going to be in your face. I mean, if you don't have any other dogs, they're going to be in your face. They're going to be testing you, because that's what they're born to do. So they can frustrate a family, I think. They're usually, like, if you were looking at the litter of puppies, there's always one that's the last one to go to sleep. That would be your overseer, most likely, is that they're going to go up to sleeping puppies and test them. So they're like a little prankster, right? It's they're a trickster, maybe would be a good way to say it. So if you're trying to groom them, if you're trying to interact with them, they're going to be all like bitey mouth. So they thrive on calm. They seek calm. They promote calm. They ask for calm. And they do great in a calm household with routine.
But they're anything but if they don't have any of that.
If that environment changes, if the biochemistry changes, they spring into action and they start testing everybody.
Yeah.
So if you have a dog and their behavior confuses you, like you think they're ADHD, you may have an overseer, where one day they're calm and the next day they're crazed.
Yeah.
They're going from this to that, and they're, always in another dog's face, giving them the business. You're probably dealing with an overseer, and I think they're like a really fun dog to have if you understand them. But if the household is stressed, you think about a household with, if you're talking about like helping people acquire the right dog, an overseer in a family of like young children probably is going to be stressful because it's not a calm environment. The kids are playing and there's adrenaline and cortisol.
So Charlie's my overseer, and as a young dog he was really, really difficult. I always thought ADHD, hyperactive, can't settle, didn't sleep. lots of mouthing, always on the move, always on the go, up, 0 to 100 in a split second. And over the years, he's become a lot more. And as you say, he does thrive on calm. When the atmosphere is calm, when everything's calm, he is calm personified. But he can get easily over aroused if anyone in the family is a little bit stressed, or a new situation where everyone's feeling a little bit uncomfortable. He goes straight into that whiny, barky, sort of testy thing. Hyper. When we have guests over, for instance, he won't leave them alone. It's like, bring you a ball, interact with me. Are you okay? Are you there? What about now? So, it's that constant interfering with everybody. But on the other hand, he's just joy. He's fun to be with. He loves to play, loves to interact, loves to do things with you, loves to work with you. But yeah, can be hard work, real hard work.
Well, and like if you think of that, because if you start reacting to an overseer, then they become more hyper. And so, they're tough to train because they're going to test you during training. So they can be frustration. And like, if you're a normal human, you're going to like try to, and you go through like a normal training cycle of sit down, stay heel, go to your place. I mean, they're going to frustrate the bejesus out of you because and then you're going to start reacting. And if you're a normal human, you're going to be starting to get frustrated because they won't sit and they won't stay and then they're going to just do more of that. So they're a really interesting dog. But isn't it awesome to think, switching for half a second over to the botanical self-selection, that if you did find your family was stressed out, that you could go to a aromatic and find something that was calming and grounding.
Brilliant. Yeah.
Because the way that you would do it would be to really calm or ground yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
And the other people, and then the dog will naturally calm down.
Naturally,
so
yeah,
it's
that's
just
exactly,
kind of like
exactly what he's taught me. He's taught me to be much more calmer than I ever was, and specifically under stressful situations, because I know that I need to be the grounding element there, so that he can read that from me and then ground himself as well. So yeah, and as you say, I mean, what better way? And I was just thinking today as well about, because he was like that at the beginning too, couldn't touch him, no massage or touchy or stroke. When he was really relaxed, he would come up and cuddle for a little cuddle or whatever. But again, a lot of mouthy bitiness, and generally, specifically when he was a little bit stressed or a little bit highly aroused, touch was a no-go. No ways can calming touch help him. And over the years, I've noticed that doing it on a regular basis, when he is calm, do you know what I mean? So giving him regular input with massages and stuff like that has helped him overall. And he now really loves that kind of contact. But again, it's got to be in the right circumstance. It can't be when we're out playing on a walk that I say, come over here, let's have a little cuddle and a massage. It's like, no, not now. But it has certainly helped him to be overall more calm with that physical touch. So it's, again, one of the tools that we could use.
Oh yeah, and that's where your knowledge of Stephen Porges comes in so handy too, and like the arousal protocol, because that dog is going to hit that bright orange zone much faster than another functional character. So that the preventative things are vital to helping him stay in that green zone.
Yeah.
Because they're born to go into that orange zone and come back. So they really should be able to like recover from it, but not if they're in it and in it and in it and in it all the time.
Yeah.
So it's just, again, it's like pulling in another of that holistic piece that's just brilliant and beautiful.
Yeah.
And that if you understand the functional character, you would know that all of that prevention is really important.
Yeah. And exactly, and working and using yourself as well, specifically, because we're talking about either taking a leadership role or stepping into that real calm role to support your overseer. So it's, I love it.
It's all about
a holistic picture, how it all sort of fits in together, all the puzzle pieces. It's brilliant.
Oh yeah, it's beautiful, and it's like, I don't know, it's always learning, but like, the more you know, the more prepared and the more tools in your toolbox you have. So
yeah, brilliant. Cool. So what's next on our list? We've had the overseer, the defender, the guide.
well, let's go with the peacekeeper, because
Okay.
that's kind of a fun one. The peacekeeper's role is pretty much what it sounds like. It is very important to the pack, and their role is to diffuse conflict. So they would be an earth in the Chinese medicine. They will be the ones that if two in the group start to like butt heads with each other, then they're going to deflect that energy to them. So they will like kind of be able to like just sort of take the energy and like pull it into them and turn it to them, because they are calm individuals. So they will instill peace and calm back into the pack when there's a problem. You can recognize them in a litter of puppies because they'll be the dog that spends a lot of time on their back.
Okay.
So they deflect any conflict onto them by getting in the middle, and they will create calm, and then the dispute ends. They're caring, they're supportive, they're kind.
So
they're really...
Sorry, are they the ones that sort of go in and do the splitting and all the sort of appeasement behaviors, like,
Yes.
back, waggy tail, showing tummy, all that kind of thing? All right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So like they're, probably in the whole scope of it, like if they were an only dog, they're probably a pretty easy dog to have around, but they're going to be that dog that if you put too much pressure on them, we had one, and when we were like training him, it was Big, so you met Big. And when we were training him, boy, if you started to get like frustrated, he would just immediately start giving you the appeasement behavior and the calming signals. And like, so if you put pressure on, if you start putting too much pressure on a peacekeeper, they're going to start giving you all the calming signals, the appeasement behaviors. I mean, they're not going to work for you if they feel pressure.
Yeah.
So,
okay. So they're
gentle.
They could be also the ones, like if you're training something, they could be the ones that we talk about doing the fiddle about behavior. So they might start being all silly and going to sniff and trying to appease you and trying to do anything to deflect your irritation with them, which is in fact making you more irritated because they're being silly. But what they think they're doing, or what they're trying to do, is to actually appease you and to calm you down and to make a little bit light or fun of the situation, I'm guessing.
Exactly. Oh, you're absolutely correct. So they're going to diffuse any tension.
Yeah.
But again, like, what a fun and cool dog to have. I mean, they're probably like, a great dog to have, like, I imagine with kids, they'd be a great dog to have with kids, because they'll, but they would try to get in the middle of humans.
If trying to get in the middle of siblings arguing or something, they would probably...
Right, because they're the referee. I mean,
yeah.
They look for too much tension and they'll go appease it. So it's they're kind of fun.
Sounds like. Yeah, cool. And then what else we got? So that was the peacekeeper.
Yep. And now after that, we have the hunter. So the hunter, their role obviously is to go find food. They would be a water personality. Both males and females can be hunters, but if the male is a hunter, they're going to tend to look fairly feminine.
Oh, okay.
So they're very slim and like going to have a tendency to be very thin and ribby. I think Isla calls them 10 ribs. So like 10 ribs. They are hard to get weight on. They're very lean, but they are super fast learners, very smart. They love repetition though. That's where you're going to see like a difference in the guide, is they'll do things all day long for you.
Okay.
And we have a huntress in our group too. And Django won't really do tricks or any fun things like that, but unless you have food. and he gets something out of it. Guides are always looking to get like something out of
What's
a
in it for me?
situation.
What's in it for me?
That's exactly it. But Zori will do tricks all day long just because she loves doing it. So they're brilliant workers.
Mm-hmm.
They are super fast learners, but they have an intense prey drive.
Mm-hmm.
They'll chase everything. So if you have a dog that just chases everything, we thought Zori was having fear issues, like she was afraid of her shadow, and then we realized she was actually chasing it, and she chases birds, and she's incredibly fast. Her agility is insane. So you really want to, this is where you kind of have to work on desensitizing that intensity somewhat. So like lure coursing for her would be a really bad idea. They're crazy agile. They have endless energy. So it's very natural. I mean, we've been very conscious with her of getting enough sleep and not having too much arousal in her day, but she just goes. I mean, she can, even though we kind of monitor it, she can play all day long.
So it's often these kind of dogs, I think, that are so misunderstood. They have so much energy, and you say they're like little energizer bunnies. They never stop. And so people think they just need to do more to tire them out, give them more exercise, more running, more chasing, more whatever, that lights their fire. And then you end up with a real cortisol, adrenaline, dopamine junkie.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's where, like, we've kind of just let it, we've crate trained her. And so she spent, like, we do have to put her to quiet time every day because she just doesn't really stop or rest. I mean, she's always hunting something, usually stink bugs around here in the house, but she can entertain herself. I mean, she'll go grab a toy and like flip it up in the air and like chase it around, but she's always like, again, she's chasing her toys, and this is where Django being a guide is a good thing, because he's more than happy to play with her, but at the same time he's just like, no, I'm done. And he'll just go lay down, and she's just on him to like play. She's always pecking at him and trying to, I mistook her for an overseer actually, but it's just her energy. And he's a saint because he just is like, he'll turn his head the other way and just ignore. So it's a beautiful representation of a guide and a hunter. But we can't keep, she's 9 months old now. We can't put, I mean, she gained 1 pound in a month. I mean, we feed her so much food, and we feed raw, and she's getting a couple of cups of like some kind of grain every day, just because we have to keep weight on her. We were getting in trouble because she was so thin. But she eats pounds of food. The metabolism's crazy.
It's so fast. Yeah.
That it's a very, very cool dog. But like,
was it you who said it, or I read it, or something? Are they the ones who have a tendency as well to resource guard, or did I get that wrong?
Yes. No, she's definitely resource guards food, but like you can see it, if like she's not going to give it up to a predator, she's going to like guard it for the pack. So she definitely.
Is that a story, or is that one of the sort of the hunter sort of traits that they?
I think it's a trait. I think it's a trait because I mean she wasn't like that when she was a baby so much as now when she's, if she catches something in the yard, and she catches. We used to be mortified when like a critter would get caught in our yard, like a mouse or a mole, but now it's knowing that that's her functional character. You kind of are like, yeah, way to go. You did great. Still gross to me, but enjoy. So she hasn't caught a bird yet. My understanding is that they can be quite good at catching birds. So that'll be fun.
Definitely, again, having a dog like that, you wouldn't, let's say living in a city, I can imagine running, chasing pigeons, etc., could be quite a dangerous thing. So that's just something you have to keep in mind. As again, coming back to us being the leader having to keep the whole group safe, knowing that you have a hunter, that you always need to be a little bit aware of that. Is this a safe situation for them to be practicing what they enjoy doing, as opposed to, no, that's not the right thing.
Right, and think of the tendency to chase cars or bicycles or
Yes.
people, or so we have to be very mindful of it. And we were walking her one day last fall, and we had her on a long line, and she started chasing her shadow, and we thought it was a fear period, but as it turns out, nope, she was chasing it because it was, and all the leaves in the fall. So I mean, if you know what you are, if you get distracted looking up at the sky or something, all of a sudden you're going to be in the middle of the street. She's not a dog that we would boundary train freely. I mean, she's always inside a fenced yard, or she's on a leash, because she's, that instinct to chase and hunt is going to take over. So it would be she's probably extremely complex to be able to train to stay close to you in a free environment.
Yeah, so I can imagine their sort of radius is much bigger than some dogs. Do you know what I mean? They're prepared to venture further, and without even knowing it, go further to find, if they find a scent trail or whatever, they're not gonna stop.
Right.
Probably not gonna stop them easily.
And she watches, out the windows, so she's a window barker, and I mean, she's pretty skittish. I mean, any change in the environment, she's extremely aware of. So, and so you
also,
just have to
also quite a difficult character to live with, because of their strong prey drive that they have.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's very unique, and it's been a lot of lessons for us.
I mean, going forward with Zori, Kim, how would you channel those sort of energies so that you are giving her the correct opportunities to still, as you say, to explore her characteristics, to practice her traits, but at the same time be able to live safely in a social environment with a family?
Yeah, and again, like with all the people, she's great. There's no resource guarding. We're very mindful with her that she is going to resource guard like a bone or food, so she does not get those around the other dogs. We keep them separate. But giving them a safe space to actually go do some hunting is important. We're blessed because we have a big, huge space where she can go out and just run and hunt to her heart's content. But if you were, like, she would be a horrible dog in a city, like probably wouldn't last, in my guess, because they're going to want to chase everything. So if you live in a space where
being triggered by all sorts of city movement and things like that, that's not going to be easy. So for instance, I had a client today that I think they've got a hunter, and I said to her, instead of chase, they live in a pretty dense neighborhood with a lot of dogs around, a lot of cars, people, etc., which she is very keen to chase. And I said to her, so instead of doing that part of the hunting, use another part of the hunting sequence, which is the searching. So we sort of taught her today to search for a little mouse, a little toy mouse. I just scented it with some chamomile, and it took her once, Kim, once. I let her sniff the mouse. I hid it. She found it inside. I took it outside, and I hid it really quite far away underneath something, over something, and she found it. She knew exactly what to look for. She went exactly there, and she found it and brought it back. I mean, it was the fastest I've ever seen a dog pick up something. I mean, dogs pick up scent work very quickly, but it's the fastest I've ever seen. And so for me, it was, redirect that. So she's still getting to hunt, but she's hunting some, a little toy mouse as opposed to something real.
Oh, and that's brilliant. And, you're spot on, because having them do scent work is going to give them that stimulation, that mental stimulation. But you also need to understand that they need the physical too. So they're going to need to go run that off. So finding a safe space to be able to do that is pretty important, but it again needs to be safe.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And that's our job. But the scent work is, Zori does scent work actually.
Mm-hmm.
And she just has taken to it like that.
Yeah, yeah, really.
So didn't even have to teach her. She's
No.
very methodical.
Mm.
Like, Django's pretty chaotic and just sort of spins around in the room. But I mean, she has a plan in her head, and it's an instinctive thing to methodically go. And even when she found it, she goes and checks all the other possible places where something could be, because there could be more.
Yeah.
And, so they're really like fascinating and cool character.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, super. Okay, so, and just one last thing about the hunter. This doesn't, because we know we've talked about breeds have something to do with this, but just because they're a hunting breed doesn't necessarily mean that they have a functional character as a hunter. So they
Correct.
might be bred a hunting kind of breed, like a Vizsla or a Weimaraner or something like that, or a Saartown, it's not a Saartown, a hound. So they may be bred specifically to do a hunting job, but that does not make them a functional character hunter. Is that correct?
That's correct. Like even a hunting breed would have guides and defenders and hunters.
Mm-hmm.
That are, I mean, I imagine a hunting breed that had a hunter would be pretty incredible. But also have significant need.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Even more so, the intensity of that I would think would be pretty fierce.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, Zori's a herding dog, so she's fast and agile and gets that, but she's not. She kind of does both things. Like she controls like the other people in the direction, but then she's gone off on her own and is hunting. So yes, just because, and that's where like breed tendencies definitely matter. Functional character will trump the breed tendencies, though.
All right. Okay. So so that's good to keep in mind. So even though, as you say, the breed tendencies will be there, so that I can see is sometimes you probably look at something and you might be a bit confused as to which one it is, because some of the traits that they are showing are breed related traits, like you said with Zori now, sort of the what did you say, sort of the controlling kind of behavior, which is part of her herding instinct, but actually her functional character is as the huntress. That one will become more prevalent as she gets older. Would that be possible? Is that the right way to say it?
Yeah, she's always, from like kind of that first fear period around 16 weeks, 20 weeks, 4 or 5 months old, she started to show the tendencies that we thought were fear period, but then they didn't go away. So like, just the tendencies to chase things and like be afraid. Again, we thought she was afraid of her shadow and she wasn't. But then she shows the herding dog traits where she's always like, she cuts you off when you're walking, walks in front of you, and like the circling and but they're really two separate things. So, yeah, it's really interesting.
Interesting. Cool. So what else do we have? We've had
we have the observer would be another one, and their role is to quickly and succinctly notice any change in the environment that might be a threat and alert the group. So while the defender is going to go check it out, the observer is the one that notices the change in the environment. So if you think of like if you've seen a flock of geese, there's always one that's watching from outside. That would be the observer. So they would be a water personality. They would not be a reproducer because they're very, very skittish. And they're always on alert and they're on edge. And so you wouldn't want to pass those traits down to a whole litter of animals. So this is the pup that in a litter, if you saw it, it's the one that really like tugs at your heartstrings. That they would like maybe be off on the side and looking a little bit sad, and like just the ears might be down and be like, oh, look at that one, so cute over there. And so, because they're showing some uncertainty and some of that skittish nature, they're shy, they're nervous, and they're suspicious. That's their trait. So when you're working with an observer, you focus on independence and confidence.
Okay. Yeah.
So they'll have like that telltale machine gun barking when something's really scary. And other functional characters do too. I mean, we have herding dogs, and again, that's part of the trait in them. But not just one bark, but
there's yeah, yeah.
like so, like a machine gun.
But again, it's more of a fearful thing. So it's a wah, 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 and sort of a back off, or
Yes.
they're certainly not going to be the ones that go forward with that barking. It's just an alarm bark, as you say.
Yeah, and they're going to likely go run and tell you.
Yes.
Again, if they're the only dog, they're going to bark, and then they're going to come to you and look at you and go,
do something.
Right, and so they're constantly using all of their senses. So again, they're going to be a window barker. They're going to hear a coyote from 2 miles away or smell something, and they're going to, you may not know why they're barking because we as humans don't sense it. They will tend to struggle with separation anxiety. And they require slow and methodical understanding, repetitive training. They do great in a multi-dog household. So finding a compatible playmate that can help them with their independence and confidence is a really great idea. So I think we had an observer as our very first dog, and we didn't know anything about dogs at the time, 30 years ago or whatever. And we got a behavior trainer, and she said he needs a buddy. And so I think she, at that point, even not even realizing what she was saying, she recognized that need, and it was the best thing. It changed him. So
that's if we got those dogs as puppies, like you say, that would be number one, is to help them grow their confidence and be able to cope with that. And as you say, having a good guide or what would is it any kind of dog that's got in the group would be okay for the observer?
They'd be great with probably a peacekeeper, defender, one of the more calm and confident dogs. A defender would go really well with an observer.
Yeah.
A guide also, but they can both tend to be a little skittish. So I think a defender would be a wonderful match, or a follower.
Yeah, brilliant. They sound like, I think again, misunderstood, and as you say, they're the ones that people go for. It's oh, shame, that's such a sweetie little one, he's a little bit scared, I'll take that one, and I can nurture him, and I can mother him or her, or etc. But it's not really the nurturing they need, it's more the confidence building that they need.
Yeah, so you would train them a little bit differently than maybe you might think, because we tend to console dogs like that, which just plays into the nervous and
insecurity.
Suspicious.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So you want to be a very nice, confident leader for them that's independent. So that's why they're great in a multi-dog household. But
because they can learn so much from others. Like you said, because they're such observers, they're probably doing a lot of observing what everybody else is doing the whole time. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, as you say, having another animal in the household that they can really observe, because that's how they're probably going to primarily learn, is probably through their observation skills.
Yeah. So if they're in a household with humans that's very calm and nurturing and really helps them with the independence and confidence, having the patience to teach them something, but then giving them the confidence and the safe environment to actually
for them to explore that and grow in that. Brilliant.
Yeah. So it's they're like a softer personality. So
I said there's one thing I like to talk about when socializing young dogs, and I call it dogs TV, where you just like go and watch the world go by. So just park your car somewhere, open up the boot, sit in the back with them, and just let them observe. So they don't have to actually interact with everything, but just from a distance, just let them observe and get the information and feel from a safe environment, i.e. sitting in the car with you. And that would be a good way to sort of to introduce them to their first steps of socialization without going into the situation, just letting them observe and take all the information in.
Right. And talk to them, you know, like, this goes with any functional character, but if you just sort of like diary your life along, you know, like it goes so far, because even saying all of those things like, hey, we're going to go get in the car and we're going to go watch this, and oh, look, there's a bird, and and when you like journal your life like that, you're calm. So your demeanor goes calm, because you can't be doing something like that and be all like hyper and adrenalized. So you're like exuding calm to them. And, you know, we did a lot of that when Zori was little. We have horses all around, and we would just go, and whatever distance she was fine to watch them, we would go watch them. And over time it got closer, and
yeah,
pretty soon they're not scary.
I love that you brought that up, Kim, because again, I hear that so often from clients that people say, oh, but I'm sure I've been heard that you're not supposed to talk to your dog because you're just talking nonsense. They don't understand you anyway. And I said, it's not necessarily the words that you're saying, but whatever you're saying, it's the tone that you're saying, and you're talking yourself, as you say, into that state. So if you are talking excitedly, then you are feeling excited. And if you're talking calmly, you're feeling calm inside. And so it's basically by talking, you actually just, what is the word for it? Expressing more of what you're feeling inside. And that's what our dogs pick up on.
Right. And that's a whole different conversation for another day, right? The vibration and energy and the energetics that feed back and forth. That's a big topic. So.
Yeah, we got to do that one as well. Cool. So have we got any left? Have we got any left?
Oh, we've got 3 left.
Oh, wow. Okay.
We got 3 left. One is the follower, the next one.
Yeah.
And the role of the follower is really to be the backup. So like, you know, if you think of like I'll use an American thing, but like you go to the show, to a musical or a play, and you got like the lead role, and like then there's always someone that if the lead role gets sick, the backup comes in. So the follower's role is a backup. So they really day to day don't have so many important jobs that they do like the rest of the characters we've talked about so far, but they exist in part to take over in case something happens to another functional character. Now, again, I'll just restate that nobody can, if you're not born a guide, you're not going to be a guide, because you just don't have that moxie or that ability to go. So they would be an earth personality as well. So they know a little bit about everything. And there's always more than one in a litter. They're the most predominant like dog in a litter. They're pretty lazy, and as a general rule, you could like as a puppy take them and like put them in your arms like a baby, and they would just like fall asleep and stay there forever. They're just happy. They show interest in people and humans, but then they'll be like, yeah, okay, I'm done. I'm going to go to sleep now. So they're just pretty docile and lazy. They also are inclined to separation anxiety, so they love to follow the human around the house. So you just need to be aware of that. They're a great choice for first-time dog owners. Now, as you know, like bringing any dog into your home is a lot of work. So none of them are easy, but this one is a great, pretty flexible personality for a first-time dog owner. They, again, would not be one you would want to reproduce because some of these lazy traits would like fall down. And if you think of natural selection, you wouldn't get the roles that you need in the next litter to do the important tasks of keeping the litter safe. They're slow learners, so they're gonna like take some patience when you train them, but once they get it and they're good. So like the defender, they're going to be a really large dog in the litter, but they're not going to show like the strength, it's going to be just all like puppy fat. So there's a difference, and you can tell the difference because they're going to love to be just cuddled and snuggled. And if do you know what neutral grooming is?
Yes, I've heard it, but you can explain it for
So
our
like when the mother grooms the puppies, they
Yes.
tend to just like love it, and like they'll groom back. They don't fight it. Like if you think of like when you're a little kid and your mom like wets the tissue with her and like wipes your face, like if you go like, oh, they'd be like,
Get off.
go ahead, this is nice, So they're gonna like it. They love to be cuddled and snuggled, so they're gonna be your lay on the couch with you. They always want to make sure you're okay, so they're always gonna check and make sure you're okay. They are opportunistic around food because they're a bigger pup, so counter surfing potentially. They do require reassurance and a lot of praise. They aren't so confident to know they're doing a good job. Okay. So giving them that reinforcement, that praise that they're doing great, like you can't overdo it with a follower.
You've got to cheerlead them.
Exactly. But they're a little bit easier to deal with, but they're also a little less forgiving. So if their resilience isn't maybe what other functional characters are. So just watch the pressure that you put on them again. So, but a great dog to have.
Great sort of all-rounder, aren't they?
Yeah. So when you get blessed with like the easy dog, that's probably about the easy dogs. None of them are easy. But like oh my God, I'm never gonna have another dog like X.
Yes.
Everyone said that.
So Lassie was a follower, I'm guessing.
Yes. Where they just did all like kind of. They're the dogs that make you think you're like you really know a lot.
They fool you.
Because they're
Fool you,
and then
you do.
And then you get the next one that's a guy.
And then you get an overseer and you go, oh my God, what happened?
Yeah. Oh my God, I'm the most horrible. I don't know anything. So the other two characters that we have left are one is the guardian. Mm-hmm. And this is not something that is a puppy. It would be a dog that turns into like a nanny.
Ah. Okay.
So, again, we kind of have one of those. We have a guide who's 13 now. Mm-hmm. And so when we got the new puppy, she brilliantly took on the role of protecting the younger one, making the puppy feel safe, taught her things, made sure she was fine. It comes about in older age. Again, they'd be an earth personality. When a mom is pregnant and gonna have a litter of puppies, she will go to the other adult dogs in the house and like do intense puppy behavior. And from that, she can see which of those adult dogs will be good with the puppies and which ones won't be allowed near them. Oh, so wow. She kind of does some testing. It's like really cool. She finds the good role models, and then when the puppies are there, that's who she would let around the puppies. And she'd keep the other ones away.
Oh, wow.
So it's kind of like
yeah. So she handpicks her nannies before the pups are born.
Right. So like it could be a dog that like you think, man, so-and-so's getting pretty old. They're tired. They're kind of weary, and they just lay around the house. And then all of a sudden a puppy comes, and they're like, oh. So it's kind of like grandma, like
they spoiled you like grandma too.
They have a reason now. So they kind of come to life when the puppy comes, and they teach and they watch over, and they're very balanced and calm.
Good.
So they're great role models for like the younger dogs, but you may not even realize that you have one until the situation arises.
As you said, I mean, it's not something they're born into, it's something that they develop later, or given the opportunity, they will move into that role.
Right. Like, we think of like, you hear about like the sage or the crone, where they have a lot of knowledge that they pass down because they have so much experience. So that's kind of what it becomes. And the last functional character is the lone individual. And they would in a trait, they would remind you a lot of a guide. But the guide, like, you can recognize it because they stand very regal and they're kind of almost narcissistic. So they're like, I am important, and the lone individual won't have that demeanor.
Okay.
So think of like a singleton dog in a litter. A single dog in a household might become a lone individual, or a dog who's spent a very long amount of time in a shelter. So they're always like on edge, and they're not like in the middle. Like, so their personality is a little bit on edge. They're not unhappy and they're not fearful, but they're just a little bit like off to the edge of a group of dogs watching, because they're independent, but they're not quite sure that they want to mingle. There's nothing wrong. They're not like doing it for any particular role. They're just not used to having that contact.
They're just more reserved, as you say. Or are they kind of picky? I mean, would they like pick one or two good friends and the rest is like, I'm not interested in others, or not even that?
I think I don't have enough experience with the lone individual to really answer that. I think it probably varies because they're all unique. A dog who's used to being a lone individual in the right household with the right dogs may learn to grow and become very playful, but at least at the very beginning, they're kind of going to stand off to the side and not really be interested in.
Yeah.
They're not super like players, like some dogs are just mixing it up all the time, and they're going to just sort of be like, I don't know. So but they don't lack confidence. It's not the same thing. They're not afraid of it. They're not like, they're not above it. They don't understand it. I think they aren't used to having it,
So again, I can see some sort of misunderstanding coming with these dogs. Let's say you, as the dog person, really wanted a happy, friendly little dog, and you love to take them to the dog park so that they could socialize with all their mates, and you can chat with all your mates, and they just sort of hang out on the outside, and they're not really interested in playing or socializing or mixing. And then, as you say, they could be misinterpreted as aloof or as not confident, etc. But meantime, that's just who they are. They just don't have a need to socialize with others.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I think like you might think they're unhappy, but they're just actually quite contented being out of the fray, so to speak. So
like some people, why not? Yeah.
Oh, exactly. Like, I can see it with me. I go to a party and I like to watch everyone else, and I'm quite contented doing that. I don't want to be in the middle. Like, I just want to be off to the side, and like, I am perfectly happy watching.
Yeah, exactly. You don't have to be involved.
No. So
wow. So that's all of them now. Is that right? Have we gone through all of them? All 9?
That's all of them.
Yeah, wow.
And I think I just need to like kind of wrap up with a few little points. That like, remember that any behavior a dog is showing has everything to do with context. So just because you see a behavior once, it would have to be a pattern. And like when we get a dog from rescue, we don't have that lifelong pattern. But like when you get a puppy, you can start to see the traits and the patterns. Breed matters again, but functional character will always trump the breed. Sex matters. So like a guide that's a male is going to be like more of a protector. A guide that's a female is going to be more of a provider. So 2 male guides in a household probably they won't get along.
Oh, okay.
Unless there's an age difference where one's maybe passing the torch on to another. But a male and a female guide, we have one of each. They get along because they're not competing. So you have to, when you look at functional characters, you don't want competing roles because that's going to bring disconnect and confusion to the group. So nutrition matters. The whole looking at the situation holistically is really important. Desexing matters. So that can change everything, like spay neuter. As we know, like everything dogs do is based on scent.
Mm.
So they smell each other's pee, they smell each other's
Mm.
bums or nose. I mean, that's how they can smell urine from another dog, and they know the sex, they know the functional character, they know what they had to eat for the last meal. They sense everything about it. So when we take and desex a dog, they lose the functional character now in their scent, and they lose the sex.
Mm.
So it can cause confusion when you bring in another intact animal. So what I learned about like the guides, because we had one guide that was bullying another, and then the other one would bully the other one, and they were just in like discourse. So the guide would be the first one to eat, like prey in the wild. So you feed them a little differently, and what we started doing was adding organ meat to the guide meals and not to the hunter's meal, so that they smelled different. So we gave them a different presence, and it's like now they stand out and they're more on that pedestal.
Oh, wow.
So all of that matters. All the group members play an important role. Like you can't play basketball without, a point guard or a center. You have to have all the team, and it's always about safety. So
Brilliant. So
everything that happens is all about safety.
So as you said now, Kim, I mean, you have to have the whole team and they all have a role. So let's just say, I mean, you bring home, like many people do, bring home just one pup from a litter or adopt one dog from the shelter. So they in a household with no other animals, or perhaps another cat or a bird or whatever, but no other dogs. So these characteristics that they would show, you wouldn't necessarily, or would you see them in the family group? Or would you see them really more when they're out socializing with other dogs?
That's a really good question. So when you bring home, the human's always going to be the leader, the guide. And if you bring home a guide as a functional character, they're going to let you know that you're not the only director in town. So I think that each functional character will show you who they are. They're not going to certainly try to take on every role, but you will see the personality traits leak out.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's why we want to be very knowledgeable about how we do and let dogs meet and interact with other dogs.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing a guide is going to want to go up and say hello, but isn't going to want to have that reciprocated, means that you really need to be mindful of the proper way to let dogs greet. And if you really wanted to find a playmate for your dog, you would go through the proper steps of, you don't just let them go in a field together. You would let them see if there was interest, like by smelling the pee. So they wouldn't even see each other. You would just say, like, my dog peed here, let the other dog go see, is there any interest, or is there like angst, or does the dog get nervous smelling that pee, right? And then you would take a walk. And so it would be a very methodical way of letting dogs meet, especially with specific functional characters. If you have a follower and they're just like easygoing and lazy, and this is another reason why it's a great idea, if you can understand the role that they're meant to play, then you would know who a great playmate would be. Because if you tried to make two guides that were males and they were both 3 years old, be playmates, they're not going to be. There's going to be competition. So it really, it sounds like it's a complicating factor, but it really isn't, because I think it can eliminate a lot of questions about who would be great. It's why dog parks sometimes are not specific functions. They don't work with specific characters, right? So
no, exactly. Yeah, it's just opened so many more doors, so many more questions. So we could go on all night chatting about this, Kim. I mean, it's such interesting stuff, but I think let's leave it there for now. What I think is very important is that people can ask questions in the chat underneath there. and Kim can pop in and answer those for you. Or Kim, I believe we can also access, they can access you, they can contact you directly if they want to do a consultation about something like this. Or if they're really interested in a deep dive, they can do the course on functional characters. Is that right? Do you want to just tell us about that?
Yes, Isla has a beautiful course. You can take just the functional characters portion, or she has a full course on canine wellness that, I mean, I highly recommend the full course. Just, again, it helps you understand the functional characters, but she also goes through life stages and what to do, you know, when you bring a rescue dog home, and nutrition, and it's really full on, like, fantastic.
Yeah, it's a very comprehensive course. Yeah, yeah.
But the functional characters,
I've done the functional characters module of her course, and I found it really informative. Yeah, and very interesting. So if you if you just wanted to do that module as well, that's fine.
Absolutely. And I mean, she gives you 2 hours on the guide alone. So, I mean, it's it's in depth as far as some of the more specific functional characters, and some of them are pretty straightforward. I mean, but yeah, it's a wonderful course and so much knowledge, and it really has changed a lot of how we are day to day with our dogs, and let me know that I've been doing a good job all along, and haven't been failing them in some way, that they just were trying to show me that they had needs for their character. So,
well, yeah, brilliant. Excellent. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll put the link for that course below here as well, so people can click on that and go through to have a look at that course. And yeah, so let's see if there's it's been a great chat. We've been on for a long time, so anybody who's seen this whole thing through to the end, thumbs up to you. Well done. Well done. But yeah, another fascinating piece that of the puzzle, of the whole holistic puzzle, as we said, that can help you to understand your dog better, and to make adjustments sometimes, just to make life a lot easier for both ourselves and our dogs, especially if you have a multi-dog household where you will have different characters, which could be problematic or it could not be. I'm lucky that I have 2 dogs and they get on extremely well, and we've never had any problems, but it's not always the case. I know some people are quite shocked when they bring dogs home and they think it's going to work out fine, and it doesn't. So yeah, brilliant. Well, thank you, Kim. Thanks again for a great chat. I can see Zam passed out in the corner of your screen there.
I bored her.
Brilliant. Okay, any final words, Kim?
No, just thank you for having me, Sue. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it has been fun. Brilliant. Okay, we'll take care. We're going to do another one at some stage, Kim. We'll do one on some energy or something like that.
Perfect.
Okay, take care.
Thanks, Sue.
Cheers. Bye-bye.